The film begins with an emergency television broadcast announcing the emergence of a novel virus at the airport. Those infected become incredibly aggressive, and the airport quickly descends into absolute chaos. 2 months later, the virus has spread globally, escalating into a pandemic that transforms people into zombie-like creatures known as virals, who are perceived as enraged monsters. The government attempts to enforce a strict quarantine. However, many citizens protest and advocate for the rights of the infected, insisting they are merely ill and in need of medical treatment. Military forces are compelled to deploy to the streets to confront civilians in an attempt to return them to their homes, which only exacerbates the tension. One evening, all television signals are lost. We see Abigail and her brother receiving a call from their father, a pilot, who explains that he is working tirelessly to assist people and promises that they and their mother will remain safe. At that moment, they hear a disturbance coming from the upper floor, prompting the family to flee the house. As they are about to enter their vehicle, a zombie leaps out, attacking their mother and ending her life. Abigail immediately hides beneath the car, forced to witness the savage creature attacking her brother as well. When a nearby police siren wails, the zombie flees the scene. Shortly thereafter, Abigail hears her brother calling her name. However, her mother has already transformed into a zombie and ends his life. When Abigail cries out, her mother hears her and gives chase, but a man named Cassius intervenes and neutralizes her. He saves her, and she thanks him with a grateful embrace. Meanwhile, her brother begins to undergo the transformation as well, forcing Cassius to tell Abigail to close her eyes before he neutralizes the child too. 10 years later, the world has descended into a post-apocalyptic state. Only a small number of humans remain, as nature has reclaimed the cities. In the forest, Abigail and Cassius were out hunting. It is evident that Cassius has trained Abigail well. She took down a deer with a precise shot, although Cassius reprimanded her for her impulsiveness and lack of patience. As night fell, the duo stopped to set up camp, and Cassius ensured all the tripwire alarms were securely installed. A few hours into his sleep, one of the alarms went off, startling Cassius. He left the tent to investigate and found hair caught in the wire. Hearing nearby sounds, he rushed to calm the horses and drew his weapon just in time to neutralize an approaching zombie, which may have been a scout sent by the horde. Cassius woke Abigail so they could depart. Over the following days, the pair continued their journey, and every time they stopped to rest the horse, Cassius continued Abigail's training. One afternoon, they halted when they spotted a vehicle nearby and quickly drew their weapons. They saw a man struggling with a zombie while a second zombie approached him from behind. Abigail wanted to assist him, but she fired too quickly before she could aim accurately, striking both the unfortunate man and the zombie simultaneously. Another creature emerged from the vehicle to feed, forcing Cassius to take it down. Afterward, Abigail searched the vehicle for supplies. Cassius neutralized the poor man with a cleaver before taking his boots. A radio in the vehicle attempted to contact the driver. Abigail wanted to warn the caller about the savage hordes in the area, but Cassius instructed her to ignore it. At that moment, other vehicles appear and a group of armed survivors surrounds them. Upon inspecting the body and discovering that their companion has perished, they assume the duo eliminated him solely for robbery. As the leader threatens them with lethal force, Cassius and Abigail strike the two closest individuals and pin them down to seize their weapons. The tension escalates as both sides point their rifles at one another until a pregnant woman named Megan exits the vehicle in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. In that instant, the horses begin to grow restless, and a massive horde of zombies emerges around them. Everyone opens fire immediately, neutralizing as many creatures as possible to keep them at bay. They are simply too numerous. Despite their best efforts, the rampaging creatures manage to close in, forcing Cassius and Abigail to engage them in hand-to-hand combat using their blades. However, the other survivors are only proficient with firearms, and soon the zombies begin taking them out one by one. One woman prepares a Molotov cocktail, but she is lunged at by a creature, causing her to fall onto the car and trigger a small explosion that knocks Cassius backward. One survivor suffers a bite and attempts to end his own journey, but he runs out of ammunition and undergoes the transformation. A massive zombie seizes the group's leader, who is slowly overcome in a harrowing struggle. In another scene, we see a zombie attacking David, Megan's husband, but he manages to kick it away. Abigail assists the couple into a vehicle while Cassius neutralizes several other creatures before joining them. As they drive off, they find a zombie on the roof of the car. Cassius brakes abruptly to dislodge it, and Abigail seizes the opportunity to retrieve their gear before they finally make their escape. Once they reach the open road, Abigail checks their ammunition and realizes most of it has been lost. Megan explains that they were heading toward a riverside colony and that she is 35 weeks pregnant, meaning the baby is due at any moment. However, Abigail and Cassius believe searching for colonies is a futile endeavor. They have seen many such settlements, and none have managed to survive. Suddenly, the car comes to a halt. The group discovers the engine has failed, leaving them with no choice but to proceed on foot. Moments later, the group reaches a deserted town and decides to spend the night there. They secure a building to ensure it is clear of savage creatures and set up their camp. Megan offers to share her food, but Cassius and Abigail only consume what they hunt to avoid any risk of infection. The couple explains that they have communicated with the colony via radio, confirming that the settlement has an abundance of supplies and medical personnel. However, the journey there takes a week, which entails significant risk. In contrast, Abigail informs them that she and Cassius are attempting to reach the west coast to escape to the islands by boat. After Cassius installs the tripwires outside, he produces a map and directs the couple toward the path they must take to reach the colony. Nevertheless, he initially declines to accompany them, warning that the horde will likely return seeking retaliation. Abigail speaks with Cassius in private, insisting that they assist the couple and suggesting that this colony might be different. A debate ensues, but Cassius remains firm in his refusal to help. At midnight, the zombie hordes discover the stalled vehicle and track the path toward the town. Meanwhile, the men find it difficult to sleep. Cassius shows David that he always carries a spare round in his pocket as a contingency in case of a bite. David has nothing but a cigarette and a sprained ankle. They converse for a while and ultimately form a bond, which finally convinces Cassius to agree to help them reach the colony. The following morning, Abigail hears a disturbance and heads downstairs to investigate. Suddenly, a zombie ambushes her, forcing her to drop her weapon, but she manages to quickly neutralize it with her cleaver. Another creature begins to pursue her up the stairs. Abigail uses a broken window to lure the creature out of the building. She nearly falls herself, but Cassius catches her just in time. By the time the horde reaches the building, the group has already departed. A zombie trips over a cable, triggering a small blast that eliminates it. Following a period of trekking, Abigail recognized the area and recalled a nearby civilian airfield where her father used to pilot light aircraft. Cassius preferred to continue on foot, fearing that an airport would make it easier for the horde to corner them, not to mention the likelihood that all aircraft had already been taken. However, Abigail and the couple voted in favor of heading there, leaving Cassius with no choice but to follow. After walking a short distance, they discovered an old building containing a vehicle with a man who had recently sustained a gunshot wound. This made it clear they were not alone. Cassius instructed Abigail to scavenge the building for supplies. Abigail found nothing but some coffee, failing to notice a family hiding in one of the rooms. Meanwhile, Cassius inspected the vehicle's trunk and found a wheelchair, which they utilized to transport Megan. Shortly after the group's departure, the horde discovered the building and overwhelmed the entire family within seconds. When they finally reached the airport, there were no planes in sight. David and Cassius began to argue over how to proceed, but Abigail interrupted them when she located her father's hangar. Fortunately, an aircraft was inside, and David possessed the mechanical expertise required to repair it. While he worked, Cassius and Abigail secured the premises. Abigail discovered a photograph of herself with her father on the floor and carefully returned it to its place on the wall. At that moment, the horde arrived, and the group quickly boarded the aircraft, even though it wasn't fully prepared. Cassius opened fire to slow the horde's advance, while David manually spun the propeller to assist with the takeoff. Abigail's knowledge of aviation was limited, and the aircraft was slow, allowing the horde to close in rapidly. Fortunately, they soon identified the correct controls, and the plane began to gain momentum. One of the creatures managed to cling to the door, forcing Cassius to neutralize it so it would fall. The aircraft finally took flight, and the group made their escape. However, they were only airborne for a few moments before the engine began to fail, forcing a descent. Abigail attempted a landing, but the plane clipped a cluster of trees and went down. By some luck, it landed on its wheels, and everyone survived with only minor injuries. They found a nearby train station and, after confirming it was clear of threats, decided to rest there. Cassius consulted the map and determined that reaching the colony would take 2 more days, so they planned to depart at dawn. Abigail counted their ammunition and realized very little remained. Megan and Cassius shared some food, and Cassius admitted that Abigail reminded him of his late wife. He revealed the heavy burden of having had to put his infected family at rest, and that his wife later lost her battle with despair, as she could no longer endure the reality of their world. Cassius also recounted the story of a boy from his town who suffered a bite. Because the wound missed any major arteries, it took 2 days for him to recover fully. Meanwhile, David found a private spot to examine his ankle, revealing it wasn't sprained. The wound was, in fact, a bite. David contemplated ending his own journey, but unable to go through with it, he cast the pistol aside and emerged from hiding. The following day, the group continued their trek under the scorching sun. David felt severely nauseous, and Cassius noticed blood on his leg. He waited until the women were well ahead before pinning David against a tree to inspect his ankle and confirm his suspicions. Cassius gave him the choice to inform the others of his condition. Otherwise, he would be forced to intervene with lethal force. The group came across a house with lights on. As they approached, a voice called out, "What do you want?" Cassius sensed extreme danger, but Abigail stepped forward, explaining they needed assistance and swearing they meant no harm, emphasizing the pregnant woman in their group. Norton opened the door and leveled a pistol at them, demanding they leave all their weapons in a trunk outside. He then invited them inside with a pleasant, welcoming smile. Cassius noted the house had electricity, and Norton explained he was an engineer who had built devices to provide power and hot water. He mentioned his wife, but ignored Megan when she inquired about her whereabouts. While staying with Norton, Abigail takes the opportunity to bathe, while Cassius reflects on photos of his late, pregnant wife. Megan, fearing for her own unborn child, asks Cassius to promise to protect the baby if she doesn't survive. During a shared drink, Norton reveals his nihilistic views, claiming humanity deserved the pandemic and viewing the virus as a form of evolution. The atmosphere turns hostile when Norton aggressively snatches a knife away from Cassius. As David's infection visibly spreads, he finds that Norton has spiked the group's drinks. Norton, now in a lab coat, uses a high-frequency sonic device to incapacitate David before the entire group is restrained in a basement. Norton reveals he is keeping his infected wife in a cage and releases her to attack the group as an experiment. David manages to break his restraints and overcome Norton's wife, despite Norton using the sonic device to stop him. Cassius attempts to shoot Norton, who flees and tries to hack through the door with an axe as the group retreats upstairs. Abigail steals Norton's car keys, and they reclaim their gear before fleeing. As they depart, they realize the house's power is cut, and Norton watches them leave alongside his snarling wife. As they drive toward the colony, the zombie horde catches up. A fallen tree forces the group to abandon the car and proceed on foot. Realizing his transformation is imminent and his ammo is gone, David stays behind to buy the others time. After a poignant farewell to Megan, Cassius gives him a final round. David faces the creatures alone, but is eventually ambushed and killed by a massive zombie. The remaining survivors, Abigail, Cassius, and Megan, reach the vicinity of the colony. Abigail's cries for help alert the guards, who open fire on the pursuing creatures. The arrival of the guards and the colony's bright lights force the rest of the horde to retreat back into the forest, allowing the trio to finally reach safety. The group enters the colony, where Megan is taken to the infirmary. Cassius warns Abigail that they should leave soon, but she refuses, tired of running. After the midwife informs Cassius that Megan won't survive, he visits her one last time. Megan names her baby girl Hope, gives him her family necklace, and passes away after reminding him of his promise to protect the child. Meanwhile, Norton arrives in the forest and uses his device to subdue the zombie horde, plotting his revenge against the colony. While Cassius cares for Hope, Abigail joins a group of teenagers at a party. When two guards fall asleep, a teenager enters a restricted tunnel. Abigail follows and discovers a remote control. Roderick stops her, explaining that the colony is rigged with explosives as a last resort, with an escape hatch leading to an abandoned dam. The next morning, Norton feigns a plea for help to neutralize a guard on a boat, while a creature climbs the walls to eliminate another. Norton then sends the entire horde into the colony, overwhelming the survivors. Abigail saves Roderick and organizes the teenagers, directing those with weapons to high ground for cover fire, while Roderick leads survivors to the dam. As the colony leader is killed while trying to flee, Abigail and Cassius reunite to fight the horde. During the evacuation, Cassius is distracted by Norton and tackled by a creature. Norton begins beating Cassius while ranting, but Cassius manages to pin him to a wall and smash his control device. As the creatures swarm and kill Norton, Cassius and Abigail rush toward the escape hatch. At the hatch, a massive zombie attacks Abigail. After Cassius strikes it down, Abigail recognizes her own bracelet on the creature's wrist and realizes the zombie is her father. Paralyzed by shock, she is dragged into the tunnel by Cassius just moments before Roderick detonates the explosives, destroying the colony and the entities within. At the dam, a creature suddenly emerges and kills an injured man before attacking Cassius. Abigail regains her composure and waits for the perfect shot, finally neutralizing the creature that was once her father to save Cassius. As the survivors watch the colony burn, Abigail suggests building a new home at the dam. Cassius then reveals he has Norton's notebook, which contains the essential instructions needed to build a power generator and start again. Here are the highlights of our movie. We hope you liked it. Please support us by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and leaving a nice comment. Take care and see you in the next movie recaps.